Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you today, and thanks for joining us. We're really excited to come and talk with you and would love to hear your input and share your experiences around this topic as well. I'm excited to be here with Kristen and Neri and to share what we have done down in the cells area. But this is something I really want to stress that anybody can do in anywhere together. And that's what we're going to talk about, but use this as an example. I really want to mention that some of you that are out there played a key role in this. Treva, we're so happy to have you here, and Jimmy and Joshua, all members of our team, and Adam and Michael that were involved with so many of these activities along the years that contributed to where we are today. So I'm sure there's others, and I apologize if I missed a few when I was going through. So we have spent some time together down at Baba Kivari, and really, there we go. We really wanted to build something, and we're going to talk about what we built, but how did we get there? And I think that's some of the issues that we all experience, right? We're in a community, we see what we want. We want that outcome. We want kids to get jobs. We want students to graduate, to go to college. We want all these things to happen. And then we're there, how can we do this? We're missing this, or we have this problem, right? Well, what we're going to share today is how we can all come together in a community and make those things happen and break them down into ways that are manageable, and to share the resources, both funding and staff and other types of resources that can come together and actually help address those issues. And I think one of the key takeaways that we can all remember is that anytime we come together and share our resources, we always end up with more. It's not like 1 + 1 + 1 is 3. It's 1 + 1 + 1 is like 50. It grows, and we have so much more to work with and so many things to make those happen. So I think the first step is we need to build those partnerships, and not just reach out when we want something, or think, oh, well, this might be a good time to do that. Just get started, get to know each other, spend time together. You don't have to have an agenda. You don't have to have a reason. Just spend time, talk, share, listen to each other. So often we use the same words. They don't mean the same thing. Or we use different words and they do mean the same thing. We need to understand what the other people are saying. What is it that they have that's working well? What is it that is a challenge? What are the gaps? Find the common areas that you're both experiencing. And I know when Neri and I started, I went down there and we just started talking. And then I went again and we just kept talking, and we kept talking, and we kept meeting. And those things are what's so important. We kept it going. We kept meeting on a regular basis, even if we didn't have something specific. And each time we would share and we would talk and we would brainstorm and we would create different ways of thinking about the problem or the situation in ways that we could come together. And Kristen and her staff that were all involved, as well as other individuals in all of our locations. So when we learn from each other what's happening and can understand what the real challenges are, we can get started. And we don't have to do it big. We don't have to solve everything. Get started with a small number, a small situation, and just begin and move forward. Make it happen for one person or one individual, or to address one problem, and then just keep going and working. And we've been doing this for about 4.5 years now, and just continue to grow and expand in this area. And so I want to, we're all going to share more of what we all have been bringing to the table and the different aspects of the partnership and the resource sharing. So Kristen, would you like to talk about voc rehab here, please?
Sure, thank you. And you did my kind of math. I like the 1 + 1 + 1 is 50. That's perfect. So I just wanted to share it. And to what Wendy was saying, we were chatting with each other one day and talking about pre-employment transition services and the need to get those services out into the rural areas to expand our ability to provide those services. And I was sharing that, we have staff that are in some of the local areas, some of the rural areas, not necessarily on the native land, but that they're already working with clients. They have a full-time job. And so to set aside time from their full-time job to build and develop a whole nother system was difficult. And so just chatting about the capacity. And so Wendy and I, through a series of conversations, decided, hey, like we already have several agreements in place. So we have, our interagency agreement for our employment first activities. We have our agreement for project search. We have what can we do in terms of expanding some of those opportunities where we work together. And so we developed a new agreement at the time. And as Wendy said, it's been a couple of years, but at the time it was new, just specific to pre-employment transition services to help really build capacity on the staff end and then also on the vendor side. Because what we didn't want to do is, have us kind of come in, build this relationship, swoop in, provide a service, and then leave. What we needed and what we continue to need to do is go in, understand the needs, provide a service, make connections, expand capacity, and then learn so that we can leverage that learning and place it into a new area. And so we are in the process right now of kind of expanding our learning beyond the TO nation and potentially into other nations. So just really reiterating what Wendy said, talking about working together, listening to each other, understanding what everybody's needs are, and then finding a way to make it work. You will often hear folks say, well, VR funding, is restrictive or can't be used in this way. We're not supplanting what anybody else is doing. And my encouragement is to take a look at those funding requirements. I won't call them restrictions. I will call them requirements, and understand where we have the flexibility in order to help each other provide services. So I will kick this then over to Mary.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Wendy. I've been a special ed teacher at Babu Kibri Unified School District for 18 years now. And when we developed our transition program 7 years ago, I believe, the first thing that I have to think was the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I developing the program? What are the things that we have to do so that we will see a great outcome for our kids? So on that first year, I believe, Wendy, you were not on board yet because you said it's about 4 to 5 years now, but our transition program was developed 6-7 years ago. What I started doing was developing a plan with priority areas. So in here, you will see that there are 4 or 5 areas that we focus on. Those are educational, interagency collaboration. The other one is student development and involvement, and another one is family and community involvement. So we also, during the time, we continue developing our partnerships. It's really hard when you are in a rural area. Our school district is in the Tohono O'odham Reservation in southern Arizona, of course, but with the very we are so far from town, we have limited, resources, so we have to make use of what we have. So during the time, we continue working on developing partnerships within the community. So within our educational priority area, what we develop are curriculum. What are the things that we can provide our students to educate them within the transition plans, within the transition goals that they have? What are the activities that we can provide them? One of them are also developing a portfolio for them that when they graduate, they can carry that on, so that if they will go to college, they have their own portfolio that they can show to the college on what they want to do, what courses they want to take on or pursue. And through USAID during that time, we were able to collaborate and schedule some training and workshops, virtual presentations with different speakers from various organizations and businesses. And also, we had a transition forum. So USAID will come to our campus, and we had some schedule for panel discussions. We invite some of the agencies from the nation, and even during COVID, we made a lot of progress during the time because we're able to tap into the Zoom, different presentations using online applications. So that's what we have. And even if it's just developing that time, up to this point, we still monitor it. I always have that vision in mind that every year is different year. So I was looking at all the achievements that we have accomplished for the past 6, 7 years. Every year we try to enhance and elevate the services that we provide for our students. And that's through our partnerships with different agencies. So here we come with our interagency collaboration. Our school district partner with Sonora and USAID. We have also partnership with Tohono O'odham Community College. Our college and career counselor is now working with the dual enrollment for some of our students. And also we connect with the director of the Disability Center for Tohono O'odham Community College, so that we have that kind of support. The students will have some support when they go to college. And I know eventually the students who took some of the courses from the college, they're able to pursue their degree in the university. So during that time too, slowly we're able to get introduced to RSA, which Kristen came into the picture. So we have also vocational rehabilitation within our community in the Tohono O'odham Reservation. But also I was able to partner with some of the VR counselors from Tucson area, from town. And that really changed everything. I mean, if you are in the program, you just continue working, continue finding ways, continue your partnership, continue building that relationship, because one agency, two agencies, that will make a big difference for our students. So we also have relationship with the Division of Developmental Disabilities, our tribal VR, just like what I mentioned, one stop. We had students who were in internship before they graduate from high school, and also a special needs division within the Tohono O'odham agency, or Tohono O'odham employment, or what do you call that, agencies and offices here on the nation. So interagency relationship is very important, and we just keep trying, we keep communicating. We don't lose touch with everybody that will be able to support us. And this summer, the highlight of our summer actually for our students is our students' participation in a youth leadership forum and youth leadership conference in June and July. And that's through Sonora, you said, through the new initiative that I'm going to mention later on. But we have now partnership with the Diverse Ability Incorporated. And we are so fortunate. I went with my students. I saw them. They blossom for 5 days. They blossom for 10 days. And when you see that with your students, you want to keep going. You want to keep finding ways on how you can support your students and families. And when you see the families so happy and how they see their students just change, from the way they are before these conferences, before all these activities that we provide, there it's just really heartwarming. You just keep going. It's a motivation for us working here in the district. Thanks, Wendy. Next slide, please. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
All right. So
I thought he was kidding.
yeah, so this is one of those two that we monitor. Aside from providing all the educational um, structure for the students in relation to transition, we also have that student involvement and development. So through our partnerships, we're able, most of this actually is through our tribal VR and through Sonora and USED. Sonora and USED is our #1 partner for all of this activities. So we provide workshops for our students, virtual and in-person. Work-based learning is a big thing that we have started through pre-employment transition services, pre-ETS, if you are familiar, if all of us are familiar with that. I was so excited when that pre-ETS was introduced, because then we're able to think of creative ways on how we'll be able to, introduce and provide those work-based learning to our students. And another thing is the Transition Ahead Roundtable that through you said, again, we have so many students who participated. These are participation from the students and also the families. And we only hear great things about this Transition Ahead Roundtable. And I remember at the end of the school year this year, we had one student who had to participate in here, and we're already end of the school year or something, but we were always there for the students. So it's really great to see that to going, because it's just a 1 day activity, and you will see a big change from the student. And also the parents are now aware of the services that are available for them and for the students moving forward. Another one is work adjustment program through Tribal VR. We have some students who graduated, went through work adjustment program here in the nation, and also through USED when we had a training. I forgot one of the work-based readiness or something like that. So now they are under the work adjustment program through the RSA or through the nation, through the town's VR program. So I'm just so excited with that. Summer work program also provided by USED is a great partnership. Finds Their Way. We just created our 3-year program for this one. I'm just so excited to start and support this new initiative for our students and families. And then, project. We also have our BUSD's Project Yes Club. So during the time before USED and all this partnership we have with RSA, we tried to provide all the different activities for our students. So we created our Project Yes Club. We take our students to our Sunrise House, which they provide a lot of free groceries for the people in the community. So you usually go there and help pack all these groceries and things. So thanks,
Sorry.
Wendy. So yeah, so that started out with that. Even if you just created your program, within your program, when you're starting to build your relationship, do something, create something, be creative. Small things that you can do within your school, within your district, within your community really matters, because these are the foundations of our relationships and the foundations for bigger things that we can create for our students and for our families. So family involvement, again, top of the list is Transition Ahead Roundtable. There's so many great things that we hear from our parents whose students participated in this activity. They are saying that, I've never heard about this, or I have heard a little information about some of the information that was shared in there. So that's really, really helpful for our parents. And of course, a follow through from the teachers and, the transition coordinators or specialists within your district. Transition Parent Night, this is an ongoing um, brainstorming, and we're going to schedule this pretty soon. But we also have some of the college and career fair within our campus. We have our open house. We have our parent teacher conference. So some of the information that we can provide to the parents, we use this time also to reach out to our parents and to our students. One thing also, we have our district's community day. There are 4 days in a year, so those are great opportunities also to get in touch with our parents and our community. There's the nation's disability day, like what I said, an open house presentation and workshop. So continue being creative. Just find the why, because the what and the how, eventually you'll find it. So thanks, Wendy. I think that's.
Thank you. So all of that put together here in a diagram that kind of illustrates. And Kristen, do you want to explain all of this? Which, by the way, you created this wonderful diagram. I have to give credit to creating this.
Sure. And actually, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, there can be many other boxes that we could add in terms of, the activities. And so essentially what we have on this diagram is, the high school student is the place where we start. What are we providing to the student? And then to the right of that, there's 3 boxes: the Sonoran Center, the state VR, and the tribal VR. So when we started this project, those were the 3 sources that had funding, the 3 sources that had some staff capacity. Now, there's different ways to pay for things. As a state VR system, we have a lot of state procurement requirements, and it takes a long time. So if we were to, engage in a relationship with Sonoran USAID, which we did, we're able then to fund Sonoran USAID to be able to fund some of those activities, such as, the summer work programs, the work-based learning opportunities. I was saying other boxes we can put in here. Through a different agreement, we at the State VR Agency fund the Diversity Youth Leadership Forum. So, we can support those students in pre-ed and self-advocacy. So really taking a look at how do we work among each other, and do we directly support a service, or do we indirectly support a service? How can we be creative in using our funding? And so in this situation, we're using a couple different kinds of ways of using our funding. We're providing direct services. We're also providing blended services, and braiding our funding to be able to increase the outcomes. And, I think we've said it again before that we all are using different terminology. So to understand, we all want employment. We all want the highest level of independence. And, I'll use some school terms: the least restrictive environment, right? We will call it competitive integrated environment with VR. So taking a look at how can we as different entities work together to support a single student towards a single successful outcome. So let's see, make sure I have everything here that I wanted to mention. I forgot to mention earlier also, at the same time that I was working with USAID and NERI, we were also involved with working with the tribal VR programs to make sure that we had a memorandum of understanding. So we had leadership from both teams meet together. We reviewed our memorandum of understanding. We each put in our activities, our thoughts and goals within that MOU. We had team members meet each other, and we developed really a relationship together at the local levels, because while I may sign that MOU, as the administrator, I don't know all of the activities that are happening in the local area. And so we really rely on local team members to connect with each other. And so we felt like it was a really good opportunity for the leaders of the regions and the leaders of the projects to meet together and then develop those personal relationships in the field. And I think that's it for this slide.
Okay. So why don't we talk a little bit, Neri, why don't you kick us off here with what are some of the results that you see, the outcomes as a result of this on campus, and maybe share one of the students' stories with us?
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, so smooth transition from high school to work adjustment program or college. I think this is always, again, we go back to the why, and this is why we do things what we do, because we always want, our vision really here on the school district is to expose our students, for them to experience different transition activities while they're still in high school. So then the transition will be smoother for them when they leave our system and then they go to the community life. So yes, we have some students, some of them, they already work here on our school district. So they're our colleague now, and their staff here in the district. But we have some students, they follow different paths. So I have a student who graduated, and she is in a work adjustment program through the tribal VR. So they are the one who pick her up, because you know how close our families over here. Sometimes we don't. I was trying to, I know that's gonna come, but I'm sorry about that. But so we have our families, they usually want to stay here within the reservation. So what we're trying to do is to find something for them to do. So we're making, progress. It's slow, but consistent. So we have students who are in work adjustment program within the tribal VR, but also those students who were under the pre-employment transition services through Sonora and USED and RSA, they are now under the work adjustment program in town. And they are now in my latest update with them is that they're in the 90-day, I don't know what you call it, Kristen, but anyway, so 90-day, what do you call it?
Stabilization period.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm so excited about that, because I know they're in the work adjustment, and then you have 90 days, and then they will have a stable job after that. So along with that are the other services that you provide as to, teaching them how to take the bus, going to work, all the other things, not only, getting you a job to do, but also helping you with all different life skills that you need to be successful. So we have those, and they came from pre-employment transition services, and also through our partnership with Sonora and USAID.
Yeah, and I think of one student that we all work together with, Clayton, who is working full-time now for the school district in the transportation department as a bus monitor. He studied social work at the community college there, Tohono O'odham Community College, and we all were involved, and many of these things weren't in place at the time, and he actually was one that helped us problem solve and bring together to achieve that outcome. And when we talked to him, and I think his words are so powerful, and we asked him directly, he loves his job. He's been there for years, Neri, right? I forget how long, full-time benefits. And he, what he says is, they were all there for me. When I needed something, I knew who I went to. I knew that somebody could help me. And we didn't have all of these formal things in place, like refer to this service and refer to that. We were building it, but everybody was committed. And I think Clayton's story illustrates what we're talking about, is that commitment to move forward, make it happen. And Neri, you're still in touch as well as others. And he's got a whole community around him that supports much of what he does or needs over the years, right?
Yes, and we also encourage some of our students over here who graduate to also find out if this is something they want to do, because there are so many openings in our school district and also within the community, and that we will always be here. One thing that I want to share is that within the transition program, the students, we have to always think that the student graduate, but we have to follow them at least a year or so, because that's the time, regardless of what they do, those are the time that's important for them. Just like what you mentioned, Wendy, that there we will always be there for them. They will not have this idea that, well, I graduate and then I'm on my own. No, we have to really communicate that with the students and the family, that we will always be there until your child, your student is able to be on his own. So we have that in mind, that at least a year or so, we're going to make sure that we'll be calling, see what they need, and continue to connect them to different agencies and support that they can get from here and from the state, because everybody's entitled to it.
Mhm. Thank you. And I think one of the things that, as we're building these partnerships and working together, I think it's important for all of us to understand what each of the partners is required to also report on. So if they have, if a different funding source or a different entity has a measure, an outcome, a metric, something that they're held accountable for, how can we help them get that while we're also building the services and supports to assist those students with employment? And sometimes we forget that what people have to be held accountable for may be not exactly what we're looking to accomplish. So we've got to make sure that we're understanding that and helping that partner to be able to get what it is that they need to continue in that partnership. And I think that the data points or the stories, those kinds of things are so critical in sharing those outcomes. So as we all know, there's a ton of challenges, right? It's not all smooth, it's not all easy, and we can anticipate that those things are going to happen. And these are just some that we encountered along the way. A lack of services, not being able to find a provider or a different a group that could provide a particular service, or students leaving and not achieving these outcomes. So how do we turn that trajectory around? Just the geography. Cells in the Tohono O'odham Nation, it's a big area where we have distance between us. How do you provide those services and create the transportation options for people? We, as somebody mentioned, COVID was in there, where we also had additional restrictions of not being able to be in person. And then how do you compensate without dropping the services and supports? And what we did for many of the students to keep them involved on these activities were to create virtual work situations so that they were working from home or wherever the setting was that they were located. And then accessing technology, that one was always something. Every situation we had to be creative and come up with something different. And buying hotspots or going to a community center or doing it in the school, or however we needed to assist that student with accessing what they needed to do their job. And then of course, staff shortages. These are all things that are not new to anyone. We encounter them all the time, but that's how our resources were put together to address these different situations. So look at the different monies from state vocational rehab. Kristen has mentioned those, the case service dollars, PREATS funding. Baba Kivri had resources that they put in. And tribal vocational rehab, the Sonoran Center, we had funding from the Administration on Community Living, which funds the Sonoran Center, as well as a couple other additional grants that were focused on employment or transition. The Arizona Developmental Disabilities Planning Council, who contributes to many projects that supported these efforts. Arizona Voc Rehab, which we've already discussed with Kristen's diagram. And then we had some funding resources from a foundation. This is ongoing. That funding is gone. And then there's another project that is funding this. But it's pieces of all of these brought together over a specific problem. So it wasn't like we went in and go, okay, we have this project, let's do this. We came in, let's do this. And as we encountered a problem, one of us would say, oh, we can use some of these dollars, we can use some of these staff, we can use some of these resources to come together around a particular student. Jimmy, I think I saw your hand up. Did I see your hand up, Jimmy?
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see this information, and Arizona RSA and Voc Rehab working so well with Indian Country, as well as the USED program that we have. And that's exactly what we wanted, as Wendy indicated, this partnership and getting our, as I say, our non-Indian allies and partners working with us. And so that we can make those footprints or wheel prints or whatever the print you make. And that's what is wonderful to see, this partnership. And I'm just curious on one thing, and maybe Treva would be able to follow up this question. With our pre-ETS program in South Dakota as well, at the Oyate Circle, some of the Tribal VR programs indicate that they cannot work with our Alpha summer camps because Tribal VR is not allowed to work with pre-ETS services. I'm not sure if that's still the case with RSA, but that's what I heard from one of the Tribal VR programs. So they did not host our summer camp as a result. So I'm just curious, maybe this is for you, Kristen. Do you guys cover those particular service dollars, and Tribal VR covers something else outside of the ETS umbrella in order to get around that barrier? I was just curious because it's nice to see that you're still working together, making it happen. And we're just very lucky that our Alpha summer camps for our youth is funded by the state agency as well. So it's great to have the partnership with our state partners. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your perspectives.
Sure. I know that the funding for the tribal VR programs is much less than that of the RSA 110 funding. And so I do believe that it's in everybody's best interest, to the extent that it's an allowable service for pre-ETS, then yes, we would absolutely, fund that. We do have some other projects where we fund some portions of the summer program. Like I said, the Diversability Incorporated is, they offer, now they're going year round, right? We started that one as a summer activity only and decided there's enough of an interest and we can expand this. And now they do activities all year round. So from a state VR agency, those services would be allowable to be paid under the pre-ETS. And, if they're potentially eligible, if they're eligible individuals, then, we would be able to pay for those as well. I think one of the caveats, and I think one of the lessons learned, is how can we use the flexibilities of each of the programs? Again, as a state entity, our procurement challenges, sometimes prevent us from doing the good work. And I hate having that as a challenge. And so reaching out to our partners to say, how can we leverage each other's flexibilities in terms of, what's your structure? How are you able to finance things? And can, the funding doesn't always have to come, from me to them. It can go from me through an agreement to, the service provider. So really looking at how we can be flexible in those terms as well.
Riva, did you want to add anything?
Hello.
Hey.
I mainly got on just to listen and learn.
Okay. Well,
I wanted to commend the presenters. You guys are doing a great job for the youth. You know, the presentation, from what I'm hearing, is mainly the focal point of the youth. That's who, you know, this whole thing is for, and the families. Even after, let's say, the cases are closed through VR, but the programs continue to follow them through at least 2 or more years to make sure that they're self-sufficient and successful in either employment, or, you know, if they're going to continue to also do training in other areas and connecting them to the resources that's available. I know on reservation there is a lot of lack of this, lack of that, but the lady that was talking about, why are you doing it? And you have to be creative to make it happen, regardless of the limited resources that are available. That's why partnership is very key in identifying the resources, whether it's a huge resource or even the small amount. And that also teaches the youth of what it means to be creative. And then the young guy saying that, you know, everybody surrounded me, they didn't give up on me. And I believe youth as such, just like Anna, you know, they're the voice, and they're the voice for a lot of the youth, because they can speak to their own peers and tell them that don't give up. You know, there are opportunities out there. So I think they're the next leaders that are going to be coming forward. And he observed of how the different partners work together. And you know, for his success. So I think that he can be telling that story and letting folks know, even talking to its own tribal government, of why this is important. And the one thing that I was looking at when I was looking at the chart is where is the school? Because the age group, it talks about 14. How involved is their IEP, and how involved is the special ed departments from the school? Because they also have resources. They have the financial support. And I think that that's also really important when especially the parents, when the students are attending their IEP meetings, especially when they're ready to transition out of high school. What can they continue to offer as they exit high school, or what can they provide while they're still in school under an IEP? I think that's also very important for them to be aware of. And then the collaboration between the state and the tribal VR through the MOU or through the MOA that's there. I think it's important to also put language on the pre-employment of how they're going to collaborate. That's very important. I know that RSA from DC, from what I'm retired, but I still, you know, look at the different conversation between tribal VR across the country, is that, you know, RSA is still saying that no, you cannot do the transition. But my take on that is that you are denying services to these students who could benefit from these services. So when they transition out of high school, there's either post-employment there for them already, or that there's post-secondary education. So they can transition into that, because you need all the support that especially students with multiple disabilities. They may need assistive devices. They may need accessibility of some sort to help them transition, and, you know, and then making those connections with the universities or the employers. So I think that's really important to continue to tap on, because tribal VR, they're told to provide services comparable to the state agency. And what does that really mean? You know, you can't say you can't do this, but you can do this. So I think that and then there are some dual cases between state and tribal VR. So I'm glad that, what you guys are doing in sales, that's really amazing. And the commitment that you have. And again, your focus is on the student. And that's so important. I'm sure that they're very fortunate to have all the voices and the advocacy that you guys do. So I really commend you guys for doing that. It really is, this is great, and I think that this can be also a model to not only in the state, but throughout the country. That is, and I'm sure there is also a lot of support from the TO tribal government on what you guys are doing. So thank you.
Treva, if I may, thank you so much. And we were just talking earlier, and we met 30 years ago on Navajo Nation, and she is my mentor. And perfect segue is, if we could, I left my email, Kristen, if you wouldn't mind sharing the information on this program so I can share our Alpha Camp information in South Dakota, and then we can do a comparative of what we're doing to make it work for the student, as Treva said. Because if there's a barrier with our partners, we can find a way around it. And with our state partnership, we can address that barrier that we have with pre-ETS services in particular, that are so important for our youth that are dropping out and giving up. And surrounding that student, I just got the visual of buffalo in the plains, or reindeer up in Alaska, but they circle the young ones when there's danger. And that's what we're doing as partners, is we're circling. And, just like our four-legged relatives, I think this is a wonderful example of forming that protective circle around our young ones and giving them the opportunity with their situation, which we call in English disability, is that, you're the focus. You just happen to have this situation. And that's how we indigenize that approach. And thank you so much, Treva, for your words. It's wonderful to still be learning from you all these years later. So again, great job out there.
Jimmy is always reminding me of my age. but I always look at that commercial. What does the lady say? That's just a number. Mine is unlisted.
I love it. Well, we're all going to chime in here, and then we want to hear from everyone. And Treva, thank you, and Jimmy, for sharing your thoughts. And I know there's some in the chat as well. I think when some of this goes kind of against how we typically operate, and I think if we let that down and operate like Jimmy and Treva and other presenters mentioned, from the student. And so solving it from that student of what they need and what the issues are allows us to move forward, and then that can expand to other students and also give us new ways of doing things. So I think really one of the most important things, I think, is to start a partnership, to not have an ask. Just spend time together, get to know each other, get to know the good things, the resources they have, the resources you have, that shared ground, that shared learning, and be focused on that student and that long-term outcome of them going to college or employment, and having that wraparound supports that Clayton so eloquently described for us. And just know that it's not like one program or one project or one this, but it's the combination and the pieces of what works from one and the other, and that staff resources are just as wealthy as financial resources. Many of these things we made happen because we jumped in as staff and made them happen. We wrapped around Clayton just as well as the other people that were partnering and working together with us until we were able to get those services in place. But we have to be flexible. We, as Kristen mentioned, those things we call restrictions how can we be open to changing how we do that? Or if we run into a roadblock, maybe the school doesn't have that, or Voc Rehab doesn't, and together we can move past that. But just know that there is always going to be a challenge. There's going to be problems. There's going to be needs that you have to figure out, but that you can do. You can do it together. You can be creative. Just go with the mindset. There is a solution and we are going to make this happen. It's an organic process. It grows and it expands and it just evolves over time. And we have to realize that it's going to fluctuate and not have just a clear path. And sometimes that can be hard for people to not have that exact blueprint, but being guided by that vision and shared outcome that everybody is interested in around the youth and their families. Neri and Kristen, did you want to add some things that you take away?
Jump in real quick. This is Kristen. Also really learning that having a single point, right? So in this project, you said has served as kind of our single point. So kind of what is that place that everybody can go back to? So if I had a question, I would go to you said. I think if Miri had a question, go to you said. You said then kind of was able to be that the linchpin and connect the different resources. So if we're all communicating together, we can all understand, but we didn't all have to bounce around each other. It all kind of went into a central hub on who is the responsible, or I wouldn't say responsible, but who is the individual that we could all go to and ensure that we were connecting with, communicating with, and then responding to.
Yes. Neri? Thank you.
Thank you. I always believe that transition is a team effort. You know, within the school district, our transition program is successful because of our special ed teachers. You know, they have their own caseload for students, and they're part of all this program and activities that we're creating within the district. So it's a team within our campus, it's a team within our community, and also it's a team with RSA, with VR, with USED, and all the other agencies that we can tap in and be partner with, so that we can provide that services and great outcome for our students and our families. So transition is a team effort.
Here's our contact information. We'd love to hear from anyone if there's something that we can answer long term. I do just really want to stress, this is not just a project here. This is literally a community and people coming together and sharing things to make it happen. So it is something that can be done in any other location. By pulling in maybe these resources or maybe others that work best in that community. Let's see if there are there any questions that we've missed or that people want to ask or would like to share anything with everyone? Thank you for the comments that are there. And I know some people have been answering some of these as we go. So I'm not sure if we've missed anything. If we have, if you want to ask it.
Yep. So while y'all are thinking of questions and typing them up in the chat, I just want to chime in and acknowledge that funding for the Sonoran Center's Advancing Employment Series was made possible in part by the Arizona Department of Economic Security Rehabilitation Services Administration. We will also be sharing a link in the chat to an evaluation. If everyone present today wouldn't mind submitting that evaluation and letting us know what you thought of today's webinar. Your feedback is so important to us in making sure that these webinars meet your needs and address the topics that you want to see addressed in the future. So we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Treva, so much for sharing your insights. And I really want to thank Kristen and Neri, because it's been such a pleasure working together, and just everybody's willingness to a force to be reckoned with. None of us would accept no, or that it can't be done. You know, we just, there has to be a way. That's all there is to it. And we keep growing. I mean, we've added some more things, and we've got some more in the works right now, as we build on what we've created. So I just love the creativity and the commitment. It's really, it's fun. It's really fun to make things happen. So think outside the box. And there's many more that are involved from our community that, you know, especially down at the Tohono O'odham Nation, that are obviously are not here, and other staff that are involved that really work to make things happen. So thank you, everyone.
If I may, Wendy, we have a special webinar tomorrow on creative employment for Indian country. We'll be sharing some of these examples, I think, to share today with our young ones, but we have a nice selection of Chavo VR, of hanger prosthetic business that wants to create fabrication labs in Indian country, as well as our partners with the National Center for American Indian Economic Development joining us as presenters tomorrow. So again, let's continue with this model of partnership so that we can focus on that individual, and then they're the ones that win. And then with all the partnership, we can still claim those successes in our programs, as well as increasing those numbers for all of our programs collectively. So again, I really appreciate the partnership, and keep up the great work. And we hope to see you tomorrow. And then we also have a in-person training, September 21st, Center of Indigenous Employment, disability inclusion. So it's just open to everybody. And again, we have a variety of different presenters. Treva will be there. So we get to go to Fry Bread House for dinner. Hey.
I want to go too.
Yes, yeah, but anyways, that's another event where we invite all of you to join us. And it will be at Phoenix Indian School. And we're addressing some of our young ones and remembering the young ones from the past at the Indian schools. And we'll be showing my current film, Remember the Children, as a lunchtime activity during the training as well. So we're going to have a wealth of different people sharing as well. And please, Kristen, maybe you and Neri might be able to share some of this for those creative employment for our young ones. So again, thank you for your partnership, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. And if anyone here wants to get something started or expand, all three of us are here. We all love to brainstorm, and we're happy to support whatever it is that you're interested in your community. Thanks so much for being here, folks. It's great to see you. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Bye.